Hello, and thank you for watching this Q&A for In Between Girl. My name is Jenny Nulf, and I am the Programs Director for the Austin Asian American Film Festival. Now it is my pleasure to introduce a slew of talent from our centerpiece film, director Mei Makino, DP Ivy Chiu, and lead actress Emma Galbraith. Hi, how are you guys?
So good.
Good.
Excellent. So my first question is that you don't see a lot of films set in Galveston, Texas, and I wanted to know what about the beachfront city inspired you guys to set your film in it?
I wish I had like a really poetic answer, but this is my answer. When I wrote the script, it was basically, it had no setting, the film. So I was like, oh, we'll just set it in Austin because our crew is here. But I talked to several kind of mentors. One of them was actually, I had a chance encounter with Barry Jenkins at South by, and I was in pre-pro for In Between Girl. And he was like, the biggest thing you need to work on are locations and casting. If you have a pretty location, like you're going to be okay. And if you have a great cast, you're going to be okay. So that was a huge piece of advice. And my other mentor, Todd Rohall, who's really great independent filmmaker, he made like the Guatemalan Handshake and Cataclysm. He really pushed me to do an interesting location. And he was just like, we see so many movies in LA and New York, and let's do something new that we don't often see. And so Galveston just, it has that old architecture, kind of has that character. It's funny. I don't know. It's just like the island itself has its own personality. And Ivy, if you would like to kind of go into more about how we captured B footage to really make the film what it is, go ahead.
So May also grew up in Galveston, and I think it was important to us to really capture the charm in it. I grew up around the suburbs of Houston, and so I also grew up going to Galveston. And my impression of Galveston as I was growing up was very different from my impression as an adult. I think when I was going there, I used to be like, oh yeah, gray water, same as, Angie, the character. And then I think as I went back as an adult, I definitely saw the charm and the vibrancy in Galveston, especially in architecture. So we really wanted to make sure we captured Angie in those environments and make it more of a character.
Yeah, I loved a lot of the, as you say, B footage of like Galveston, like some of the housing there. It's like so pretty. It's a very underrated like city, I think. So I was really pleasantly surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
This question is actually for Emma. What initially attracted you to this project? What initially attracted you to this project?
Oh, goodness. So many things. I think in a lot of ways, the initial character breakdown for Angie, which was just like mixed ethnicity girl in high school, struggling with her identity, struggling with love. Like a lot of those things were very much appealed to my life, my personality at the time, being a 15, 16-year-old girl in high school. In Texas, all of those things. And I think just right off the bat, I was like, I could play this character. I also, this was my first like feature film ever, one of my first acting roles ever, actually. And yeah, I think just a lot of things fell into place, and I was very lucky to even like be considered. But what's funny is that, so I found the casting call that May had sent out. I think May, you emailed my high school theater director at the time, and was
we emailed like every high school theater director in the Austin area and Round Rock area. But the funny thing is, we emailed your high school director, but then I had seen Emma's audition for a short film through Creative Action, and Emma was already at like the top of my list. And I emailed Emma as you were emailing me.
Yeah, I was in my inbox typing out a draft email to you saying, hi, I saw your casting call on this Facebook page. Can I audition? When I got an email in my inbox, and I was like, oh, who's this? It was from Mei Makino. I was like, hi, I saw you audition for the short film. Can you audition for us? So just serendipity.
It was crazy.
That's really cute. What high school did you go to, by the way?
I went to Austin High.
Oh, nice. I went to Cedar Park High School.
Nice.
Great. So this is mostly for me, but anyone else can kind of chime in too. What I really liked about In Between Girl is that you kind of allowed for your protagonist to be a little bit messy. And I feel like in a lot of coming of age, like high school stories, like there is a messiness to them, but it's always forgiven. And I feel like there's something that's really kind of special about In Between Girl is that there's like sometimes not forgiveness with what the mistakes that Angie does. And I wanted to ask, like, what made you want to kind of dive into some of these themes and make her character a little bit more flawed than we usually see?
Yeah. So there's a really good TED talk by Tavi Gevinson, the like fashion blogger. Now she's an actress. She did this like maybe 7 years ago, and she was like 16 when she gave this TED talk. And it was really amazing. Like it really influenced the way I thought about writing characters. But it basically was like female characters, we need to see flawed depictions of them, because if we only see like these really polished, perfect women, that makes women feel worse because, you know, no one is perfect and polished. And at that point, like seeing that TED talk, and I took a couple other classes around gender, like made me realize like the flaws are kind of the magic sauce and what's good. And, you know, I think Damien Chazelle has some quote where it's like, the stuff that you don't want people to see is the stuff you should be writing about. So for me, I thought about that a lot, and I knew I wanted her to be messy. I knew I wanted everyone to be messy. But I also, you know, I don't only have love for Angie's character. I have love for Cheryl's character as well, you know, and I wanted all of the female characters by the end of the film to be in a place where they were going to be okay. And sometimes doing the best for yourself, and in this case, doing the best for these characters, is you have to like let things go and you have to do what's healthy. And so kind of that's what happens with Angie and Cheryl. I just think realistically, there's too much of a broken trust there to have justified an ending that was like, I forgive you, we're BFFs now, da 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 da. Like that's just not real. But in the same vein, it's like I have had friendships and relationships end, but I still look at those people with respect. Like I maybe don't want to be their best friend, but I think there's a mutual understanding between the two girls at the end that I was interested in seeing, because I think, you know, sometimes, you know, with feminism, there's this idea sometimes that this false idea that like women must support women at all times. And I don't think that's always the case or always super healthy. I think you just, you know, there's a quote that's like, do no harm, take no shit. And like, I think all of those girls at the end are doing no harm to anyone, but they're also not going to take any shit. So that's kind of where I wanted to leave them.
Great. Obviously in between. Oh, yes.
Oh, I would just add also, like, I think it's really, really important to tell stories about characters that are like worthy and deserving of love and respect, not just despite their flaws, but like including those flaws and because of that mess. And I think like just the more stories we tell like that, the more we build a culture that is not punitive to people who are just trying to figure out life, and respects and just, cultivates this respect for everyone, you know, no matter like what mistakes they've made in the past. So I just want to put that out there as well.
So the kind of like even piggybacking off of that for both of you, having another woman as your protagonist, I feel like is an extremely difficult tightrope to walk. And the characters are usually like maligned traditionally in cinema, but I love that this character of Angie is not. And can you talk about balancing that and making Angie's choices feel natural and understandable and a little bit relatable?
I mean, I think it's just like, for me, it's like when I think about a character, a lot of times I think about their past and what they're kind of going through. So Angie has a tough past. She hasn't seen a healthy relationship before. She's always been around this fighting and this bickering. And so that's what she thinks is like, you know, kind of healthy. And so she ends up in this relationship with this boy that's similar. They're arguing and they're bickering, and she thinks that's okay because that's the only thing she's seen. So I think what you have to do for me is just like, I really kind of think about why would someone do this? And then you kind of dive into the psychology of that, of just like, this is all they know. They don't know any better. And you can have those like, save the cat moments where they do something nice and you know that they really do want better and they want better for others, but they just haven't had the education yet, So for me, it's really about story and building that psychology. And, Emma added so much to that. I know she really, really got in the character of Angie, and really made those flaws real and also made her relatable in such an honest way.
Well, so obviously the title In Between refers to like many things in this film, from like the parents to her relationships to her feelings on being mixed race. I wanted to ask, like, what in between qualities in your life did all three of you bring to the film?
Should I go? Who wants to go?
I gotta think about this.
Let me count the ways.
I mean, like Emma and I have a lot in common, for sure. We're both mixed, so I think, but we both brought the mixed part in different ways, I think. Like, I don't know, Emma would come to the table with kind of some ideas about, like writing Chinese characters and how, like, when you're showing your Chinese parent the Chinese characters and they're like, no, you did an awful job. And like, I don't know, just hearing her stories. And then like, I had a lot of my own stories that we kind of talked about, over a year before. And I think the biggest thing is just like not feeling like you belong anywhere was like a huge point. Cause I think for me, it's like, I've grown up in such white spaces. And now that, like, I don't know, it's just like interesting to observe everything now that you're an adult. But yeah, I grew up in really white spaces, but I was always othered because that's just what happens when you're in an all white space. And so that was hard for me to deal with. But then it's just like, when you look a certain way and you grow up around white people, you have to individually, look into your own culture and look into who you are and kind of, go backwards. Like for me right now, it's like, I'm going to start Japanese classes next week, which I'm really excited about, And so I feel like for me, like a lot of me discovering my Asian side, and I think also Angie as well, is you go backwards a little bit and you relearn things. And yeah, that was a very long-winded answer, but anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty universal condition and quest in life to search for belonging. And I think everyone at some point in life or in different spaces, depending on where you are, feel a sense of in-betweenness or of othering, regardless of your ethnicity, sexual identity, gender, anything. And something that is inherently like you can't ignore about race in particular is just the way that you appear. You can't really control how people see you, because they already will have some sort of judgment or assumption, whether good or bad, right? And so I think for me, I am caught in between of a lot of things as far as I think trying to be comfortable with this like very binary world that we live in, whether that's about gender or sexual identity or even or race or the professions that we're in. And I think for me it's always just about remembering who you are, and that you belong, whatever space that you feel othered by. If you are able to see yourself as belonging to yourself in that space, it allows other people also to not put that lens on you. I think having a film that is definitely about exploring your racial identity and just telling stories that are relatable was a fun experience for all of us. And challenging at times, but
I also like your shirt, Ivy. I didn't realize it was in the mood for love. No,
Yeah, I
Nate?
love it too. I
Aw.
saw it when you were talking. I was like, ah.
My partner Hannah got it for me. Can't take credit.
Yeah, no, Ivy, I really like what you said about the binary, this like binary structure. And I think that like also applies to like racial identity, especially for mixed race people. It's like being in, so what I'll say is that like my upbringing was not as white as my environment was not as white as Angie's, but there was still for me this feeling of like I can exist in white spaces as a Chinese person, or I can exist in Chinese spaces as something, not quite a white person, but also not quite a fully Chinese person. So where does that leave me? And that like just navigating and understanding how this like this binary structure that this world we live in tells us that we have to follow, it leaves so much to be desired. And yeah, and I think like a lot of Angie's journey throughout the movie involves just forging her own identity and figuring that out for herself in a way that like nobody is guiding her through really except herself, and learning to trust her own gut and her own her own dreams and her own desires through that, and realizing that she can be enough for herself if she leaves that binary space and trusts that it will be okay and that she will be a fully formed person outside of it.
Yeah, it's like accepting that everything is fluid and also messy, and there is no straight path. And even though you feel in between possibly two things or several things, it's almost like an infinite number of things. You're always just in between. You're in this like thing we call life that lasts for however long, 70 years, 30 years, we don't know. And we're just trying to do our best to get through it and be kind and a good person and make a difference in this world. And Angie did that in her still small way.
I love it. So this is actually specifically for Ivy and Mei. And actually Emma too. Some of my favorite scenes happened in the bedroom. I love how that was conceptualized in that space. And Ivy specifically and Mei, how did you guys go about shooting it? And Emma, how did you kind of go about, performing in that such a small space and making sure that it was like the right kind of performance?
Yeah, I feel like my approach to cinematography is always have a plan and then throw it out the window if it needs to change. Because I mean, you have to have a plan of attack to figure out, hey, well, we have a certain amount of hours in a day. We got to make sure we have these beats. And so it's always important for me to work with the director, make sure they know what kind of coverage they're looking for and what specific moments in the story they want to highlight. Because my job as a cinematographer is to point the camera at where the story is. And that could take shape in so many different forms, whether that's like a specific lens choice that we use or where the camera is, how the lighting is. And we knew that the bedroom was sort of this world where it unravels and tells you exactly what Angie and Leon's relationship is throughout the movie. And it takes place in so many forms. So I really didn't want to just shoot it in one way. It was such a small room, but I really wanted to make sure there was some kind of dynamic way to portray it. And so I think it was, on the day we worked with Angie and Liam, Will and Emma, and kind of blocked out what the scene looked like and where they would be on the bed. And there were specific scenes where we did a lot more coverage of, like the first time they had sex. But other than that, I think it was just finding their relationship to each other and figure out, what we wanted to highlight and what the vibe was. but we wanted it to be like surreal and magical and like their own space.
Yeah, one thing that I really love, Ivy, that you came up with was the shooting through the door specifically for Angie and Liam. Like we just shoot through the bathroom door for Angie and Liam, which is so beautiful because it like frames them as they're kissing. And it's just like very, I don't know, just really visually nice. And so I think it was nice that we had like that visual motif specifically for them. Another huge part of it was production design too. We were always facing, a lot of times that medium shot was always facing that wall, which is full of Angie's art, which funny story, like night before we shot, I went to Larissa Amedova's house, who's the artist who does all of Angie's work. And I was like, we don't have enough art. We need more art. And so she gave me like all of this stuff. And Charlotte, the production designer, and I were like up at 6 a.m. putting everything up, making sure it looked good. And also like Ivy was saying, I don't know, Ivy was very smart about just coming to me and being like, what is the feel of the scene? And so I would be like, it's romantic. And she would be like, that's all I need. And she would make the lighting like that and make it feel woozy and kind of surreal. Like the scene where Angie's talking about like, am I in love with Liam? All of this stuff was, you know, that handheld slow motion, very kind of romantic lighting that just really hit in a great way. So it was kind of a lot of what Ivy said, just kind of being creative with the restraints, and then also just coming up with, okay, what is the scene saying and what does it need? Because I think like another thought that comes to mind is like the condom scene with the mom, making that look different, shooting at a different angle because it's not Liam and Angie. So yeah.
So I'm so sorry. My cat has been like meowing for about 5 minutes. So I missed the part of the question that was directed to me. Could you repeat it again? Also, can you hear the cat?
Only now that you've mentioned it. I have bunnies, so I have the same issue. They've been making noise the entire time.
Okay, well, I hope it doesn't get too loud. I'm trying to like convince her to hear so I can scratch her head. But sorry, yes. What was the question for me again?
So it's particularly in the bedroom scenes where it's kind of like a small space, but like a lot of room for like performance. How did you kind of like balance that and utilize the space to your best ability?
Totally. I think the bedroom is a really interesting setting in the movie because like so much of when Angie's with other people, she's this very quiet, reserved person. She doesn't really feel like she belongs with anyone in particular. So that's reflected in how she interacts with spaces outside of her house and really outside of her room. But in her room, like that is her space. It's very clear that that's the case by all of the wall art, all of the photos, everything, the way she is like designed it to be her lair that she goes to feel like herself. And so it makes it that much more special that she's letting Liam into the space, even though he kind of just barges in there on his own. But the fact that I think she only interacts with Liam and her mom in that room, and mostly Liam. And when it's neither of them, it's just her internalizing things and thinking through things and big self-actualizing. So I think it was just really important for me to feel that in my body when we were, which was mostly on the day of shooting, just to sit in between takes in the space and get used to the feeling of like, this is her comfort zone. It's the space where she feels most free to explore herself in all of the ways, mentally, like spiritually, sexually. I think just having that feeling very like squarely in my body was what helped the most to portray that, I think. Because we didn't have a lot of time to shoot most of the scenes, but I think a lot of time was, we did a lot of takes of each scene in the bedroom, I think, at least the big ones. And I think that really helped to solidify that feeling of portraying her.
All right, I have a couple more like lighter, sillier questions to end on. What is your favorite breakfast food and why is it frozen waffles?
The number of Eggos I ate on set.
Well, I just really liked frozen waffles at the time. Honestly, I think what happened was, I don't even know if I had written the waffles in the script, but I was shooting like proof of concept, like just pictures of Angie's desk for an audition flyer. And I had waffles in the freezer and I was just like, oh, I'll put these down. And I ate them and I was like, waffles are amazing. And so then I like decided to write it in the script, but now I have a gluten intolerance. So I just eat yogurt. My life is sad.
Oh,
no. I know, it's really sad.
Oh God, no, the number of Eggos, I couldn't even tell you the number of Eggos I ate on set, just all of the scenes that required waffles. And like we were only taking like very small bites or just pretending to eat, but still like I was so full. Just every day that we shot something like that, I was just like, yeah, I'm good. I don't even need lunch.
Okay. And so for my final question, which is like really, it's very silly, but do you think Angie would have been a huge Olivia Rodrigo fan, or would she have considered her to be too mainstream?
Well, I would say probably too mainstream. But let me let Emma answer this because Emma is much more of the Gen Z, era. So I'm going to let Emma take this one.
So I think, and I've never thought about this before, but as soon as you said this, I was like, oh my God. I think she would definitely hold off on listening to her for a good couple of months. Like after Driver's License came out, she would have not listened to it. And then after Sour came out, she would have been like, oh God, okay, everyone's talking about this. I guess I should probably give it a listen. And then I think she would be lying on her bedroom floor, like sobbing to drive, especially like if this is like in the middle of the movie, like she would be sobbing to Driver's License and like Favorite Crime. And like one step forward, three steps back, she'd have been like, oh my God, why does this remind me of my relationships? And she would be like making sad, angsty art, but she would never tell anybody. That's my theory.
I could see that. Yeah.
I had to Google Olivia Rodrigo just now. That's how out of touch I feel.
It's a good outfit
for me.
Well, then maybe you're more in line with Angie. You're too cool. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for making the time for this Q&A. I guess to kind of wrap things up, is there anything you guys want to promote in the future that's coming up for you guys? Or to continue promoting the film is also good. Anything exciting happening for you guys?
Yeah, if you guys want to keep following the film, go to www.inbetweengirlfilm.com. And it has all of our updates, news articles, what we're doing next, fun things like that.